are you when you get on this jet boat? You know, it's like you get on it and you just like become Steve-O all of a sudden.
John, I had toilet paper. You could have just asked me for toilet paper, point blank.
Our beloved Phil responded with, if I take a shot every time someone says, yeah, man, will I die?
If you're scared, go to church. If you're broke, don't message me. 1,500 OBO trades welcome. Good morning, degenerate anglers, and welcome to Bent, the fishing podcast that promised itself it would be more financially responsible in the new year, but already bought 2 tack-to-bite fish calls on impulse from the As Seen on TV end cap at Walgreens. I'm Joe Cermelli.
And I'm Hayden Samak.
And Happy New Year, degenerates, and to you too, man. Happy New Year. Here we are in 2022. 365 new opportunities, am I right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
And we hope you guys had a wonderful holiday and created beautiful memories with your friends and family. The, like the vaccinated and boosted ones, I guess. Anyway. And look, this week this week we've got a bunch of new stuff for the new year coming at you. We've got a new segment. We've got new guests, new co-host. You know what I'm saying?
Come on, man.
Dude. I'm kidding. You're still you're stuck with Hayden. But really, we are very excited for the new year and the new season. I guess, is this a new season? Is a new year make a new season? Is that right? I don't even know.
That's what they tell me. I don't know.
It is officially a new season.
I should really check with somebody about that. But yeah,
I mean, I don't know
so.
what friggin' difference it makes. We'll go with that. We'll say we'll say this new season of Bent. But before we get to all that, we've been on a little bit of a break at Meat Eater over the holiday. They give us a nice break, Hayden and I. And as all you guys know, I think by now, while Hayden lives in Montana, he's a Pennsylvania boy. And despite our best efforts, we had every intention of linking up while you were back here on the East Coast for the holidays, and that did not happen. You want to explain why? Should we tell the good people what went down?
Well, let's start at the beginning.
Yeah. All right, we'll go from that could take a little while, but go ahead, go from the beginning.
Yeah, so we had planned to go fishing like basically as soon as I got home, but my flights got all messed up and that never happened. So I came in like a day later. You, however, did go out that day and you had a wonderful day on the water.
Yeah, so the day that you were stuck in Houston, I was floating a local river and just crushed some monster wild browns, including my personal best. So yes, that was strike one for you and I fishing together. Thank you, airlines.
That hurt. So yeah, I missed that. Then we had a plan to do a little togging, which I was really, you and I have talked about this like multiple times. I was very excited about that. But despite the forecast looking lovely just a few days prior, shit got super nasty and we wisely scrapped the trip. However, we did make plans to hit the tog grounds when I got back from a little steelhead trip I was going to take the following week. So I was very hopeful for that happening.
Yeah, so we pushed Tog by a week. We rescheduled because that's just December. 3 days out, it looks great, and the night before, it's like, oh shit. So a little reschedule there, and then what happens?
I'm trying to stop saying yeah, man. I don't know if you've seen the comments, but folks are picking up on the both of us. Yeah, starting half of our thoughts with yeah, man. In fact, when I put out the call to, for listeners to get questions on our IG the other day, our beloved Phil responded with, if I take a shot every time someone says, yeah, man, will I die?
Yeah, man. I think you would.
Yeah, man. So anyhow, after that, let's see. I had my 30th birthday.
Congrats.
Thank you. A wonderful Christmas. And then I caught COVID. Completely just f***ing everything else up, including the steelhead trip and the tog rain date. So I ended up just kind of like isolating in a cabin for the remainder of my visit until I tested negative. So it was, it was fine, but not great.
Yeah.
I hope yours was better. What did you get up to, Joe?
Well, I did a little brown trout fishing. I also did some togging. No, I'm kidding, of course.
Just rubbing it in, dude.
So we were supposed to go the Wednesday after Christmas, And I got the call on Monday that it was like, hey, man, so here's the thing. I have COVID. And I was like, holy shit. And here's why I said holy shit, because you were like the 900th person that said that to me over the holidays. So we had a nice holiday with kids and the family. But I mean, it's in the back of your mind like, all right, where's my COVID? It's coming. And so far, here we are. Like, me and my family have skated. But, funny thing. We ended up going on that TOG trip, the one you missed, and I think I was the only guy on the boat that had not already had COVID and gotten over it, and was negative. And I was actually jealous. I'm like, damn it, I want my COVID. Like, let's just get it over with already. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I feel that. Yeah,
but it was a good break. It was a nice time. Good holiday.
Yeah, well, that's great, man. I'm glad to hear you and your family had such a happy holiday.
Well, thanks, dude. I'm glad you at least, got to have yourself a merry little Christmas. I imagine you're excited to head back to Montana, yeah?
All my flights back home just keep getting serially canceled. So the joy continues.
I think it's fair to point out, since you just mentioned that, you're not there yet. You're heading back. This is after the new year, and you are still in Pennsylvania because your flights have been canceled so many times.
Yep. I'm still stuck here. But, if there's one thing that is cheering me up a little bit, it's all my friends. They've been posting ice fishing pictures.
Yeah.
So all the lakes in Montana are basically frozen up, and that means that pretty soon I'm going to be out on the ice, and I'm particularly excited about that, and I think you know why.
Well, I do. Oh, I know one reason is because you were hoping to maybe ice fish while you were home, and I kept telling you, bro, it's 65 degrees here. There is no ice between here and Buffalo, I promise.
You were right.
But I also imagine you're itching to use some of that sweet gear you got from 13 Fishing? Is that the reason?
Yep, very much so. I've been just like patiently waiting since the day I got it to break it out, and it seems like the time is finally here.
Yep.
I know I've said it at least twice on here, but those finesse baits they send over are just like the fishiest things I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, dude. How cool are those flashbangs, right?
That's exactly that is exactly what I was thinking of. Those are like by far my favorites. I just think that they're like well made, like you get one in your hand and you're just like, yup.
Yep. I'll just jump in real quick and say that even the small soft plastics made for ice fishing, dude, I was using a few open water for crappies over holiday break. Like, they're great there too. They're great there too.
I saw that. Yeah, and they also don't cost like a shit ton either.
No.
I think the flashbangs were $8. It seems like you go to like a tackle shop. Those still exist. You go to a tackle shop and you buy like a bucktail or whatever, and they're all like hand spun with unicorn mane and like made with lead from Mars, and they all cost like $100. These babies are the working man's jigging spoon. Right,
the discerning working man's jigging spoon, right there.
Yes, exactly.
Well, super, super good deal. Anyway, look, I'm sorry you had kind of a shitty trip out here, and I'm glad you're healthy and getting after it soon on the hard water. But I'll tell you what, as shitty as your trip may have been, it wasn't anywhere near as shitty in the literal sense as the trip that our colleague, former guide, and good friend Michael Come On, that's actually his last name, like come on, man, is about to recount in this week's Smooth Moves.
Why did you do that? Why? Why did you do that, Terry? Oh my God.
All right, so we're here with my buddy Michael Kaman, who is our partnerships coordinator over here at Meat Eater, but was also for many years a fishing guide.
I just gotta jump in and say, I just learned this. Like, I work with Mike too, although like digitally, because I'm not in Montana. I'm like the East Coast Milton with my stapler out here. So I had no idea that Mike was a fishing guide. Like, we email frequently about all sorts of things, fishing and work related, and I'm like, he was a guide?
Yeah.
What?
All the time we've emailed back and forth, Joe. It's nice to finally put a face with the name.
He was just telling me he bought a Chug Norris lure, which was on end of the line, and
nice.
At my recommendation, and took it to Costa Rica and banged a bunch of mahi on it.
Oh, shit.
Sure did.
Nice.
Yep. Joe's on it with the Chug Norris.
Chug Norris. The answer to all things. Anyway, this is cool. It was surprising and cool. And I'm pumped that we're doing this.
Where were you guiding, man?
Well, I was a backcountry guide for many years, so I guided in Wyoming and in Montana here, mostly in the Bob Marshall Wilderness.
Cool.
And then also rowed a boat for quite a few years here in the Bozeman area, so on the Yellowstone River and the Madison River, and fished a lot on the Gallatin.
Nice.
So right in the thick of it, right? Like right in the most overcrowded rivers in the state.
You bet, yeah. Where we have lots of competition, and you have a better odds of finding a fishing guide than you do of probably anything else here in Montana. As you start asking around people, it's a pretty thick crowd here in town. Yep.
So Joe, Mike was telling me this story when we were actually elk hunting when you told me this story. And I immediately knew Joe has to hear this because this is just perfect.
I have no idea what's coming, but I can't wait. I trust you, man. I trust you. I can't wait to hear this.
It's right up your alley.
Shoot, lay it on us, dude.
So as we all know, as a guide, we try and do as much as we can for our clients all the time, and sometimes we do that unbeknowing of what actually might happen. So on this particular day, I had a couple of clients. We were doing a walk-wade trip, so just on our own 2 feet, kind of walking up and down the river, and tend to spend more time with one client for maybe 30 minutes or an hour, and then you kind of bounce back to the other client. And
sure.
So I was fishing with 2 guys this one day. They were friends from out of town, and earlier in the day, one of the guys had asked me if I had a pair of gloves that he could borrow. I said, sure, of course. I'm not going to let a guy go with cold hands, and so I had an extra pair of gloves that I let him borrow, and I thought
what time of year was this, Mike? Was it like gloves weather? Obviously,
weather. Yeah, it was in the fall. I think. I think it was about mid-October or something like that. So out here in Montana, getting to that cold time, especially guys out of town.
You're right. I completely forgot that like only mid-July isn't glove weather out there. So. My bad.
Right. So it was not July 15th to the 20th, so we were wearing gloves.
Right.
Yep. And so it wasn't out of the realm of possibility that he was going to need a pair of gloves for the day to warm up his hands, and especially with the cold water that we have out here. And so I let him borrow with gloves. And while I was up spending time with the other client, I didn't think anything of it, and went back to see how this one gentleman was doing a little bit later on, and he proceeds to hand me one glove back.
Like the Michael Jackson thing.
Yeah, and without the dance moves, though.
Right.
And I asked him, I said, well, John, where did the other glove go? And he said, oh, well, I had to take a shit. I said, okay, well, where'd the other glove go? And he said, well, I needed to wipe my ass with something.
Oh, I would just call that point blank rude. That's just rude.
So I just pretty much handed him the one glove back and said, you know what, you can keep it. It's my tip to you. And I also said, John, I had toilet paper. You could have just asked me for toilet paper, point blank. You didn't have to go the glove route. And so I have quickly learned that if somebody asks you to borrow a pair of gloves, ask them what they are going to do with it.
This is almost as close as it comes to literally wiping your client's ass.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And we haven't had a good shit story in a while, so this is very refreshing. We were kind of overdue for excrement, you know what I mean? But that's extremely rude, and like that is why buffs were invented. The only reason to ever have a buff on, and I don't give a shit, pardon the pun, if it's a Sims buff or a buff or whoever, everybody you can buy them at Walgreens. Like, that's why you spend that money to wear that around your neck. Like, that's what that's for, is toilet paper.
It's a lot easier than a sleeve. Yeah.
Right, yeah. And, like, to me, it's like that guy, nobody told that guy if you fly fish, you have to wear a buff, you know?
Yeah, well.
So you're kind of at fault there, too. You should have been like, where's your buff?
Yeah, well, once Orvis, I guess, starts making them, maybe we'll see him more on the fly fishing scene, you know.
I think I have an Orvis buff or had one. The other thing I'll say, too, is as gross as that is and as rude as that is, maybe you guys have the same thing. Like, I'm weird about fishing with gloves on. I hate it. I hate fishing with gloves on and will avoid it at all costs. And I have one pair, I forget if they're Kenai or what they are, but they weren't anything fancy, and they're fingerless gloves. And they are the only gloves that I am really comfortable fishing in, whether it's saltwater or fly fishing or whatever. And like, they are so precious because of that. I've basically done everything with them but wipe my ass. And like, even if I had to wipe my ass with them, I'd have to bag them and bring them home, because like a good pair of fishing gloves, it's very hard to find.
I would recommend, if you are going to use a pair of gloves, don't use fingerless gloves to wipe your ass, Joe.
Well, yeah, that's if it's on your hand. Wait a minute. Now you just open up a whole other can of worms. Do you figure that he used your glove like a single piece of Charmin, or did he put his hand in the glove and then wipe his ass with the hand in the glove, which would be more pressure and probably clear off more shit?
I guess in my mind, I've just envisioned the hand in the glove, using it like a glove.
This is a horrible, horrible conversation.
No, it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful, and I appreciate it very much.
Dude, what the hell is wrong with folks, man? That's crazy.
I ask myself that question at least 10 times every time I go out in public. You know what I mean?
It's mind-blowing to me. Lose a sock or something, bro. Use some leaves.
Right.
Something. Anything else.
Like I said, this is why buffs were invented. You know what I mean? Like, that's what they're great for. Anyway, let's move off of this. Let's move off of this topic. Okay.
Yeah. Agreed. And speaking of wiping, I'm about to wipe the floor with you, Joe.
Ooh, sassy.
Mm-hmm. That's right, boys and girls. It's time for that weekly competition we call Fish News.
Fish News!
That escalated quickly.
Alrighty then. First news of 2022. How fresh and
Ventura.
exciting is that? Yeah, little Ventura, bump away at tuna. Good. You don't catch Christmas Vacation, but you get Ace Ventura. You've heard about the Christmas Vacation thing. I know you've heard it from several people. But it's impossible for you to have not seen that. Anyway, before we get started, though, I just wanted to drop a little plug, if I may, for a piece that I published on the Meat Eater website this week, which is rare. And I know this. I am a writer. Yeah, well, it is. I am a writer that seems to have little time to write anymore because I'm busy doing other things. But I am trying to get back into that groove a little bit this year. And earlier in this very show, you had mentioned the brown trout fishing that you missed. Well, the story I posted this week is tied to that trip. And I'm making the case, right, that if you want to become a better fly fisherman, with streamers in particular, put down the fly rod and throw lures and bait. So how's that? Oh. What does the guy who insists that there's no better way to catch a trout than with a fly rod have to say about that? I'm curious.
Well, honest to God, man, I'll tell you what, if you go back in that bent email inbox that we so religiously check, you will see a email that I replied to. And in that email, a listener was asking me what he could do to, kind of up his odds of being successful in fly fishing as he, got more into it. And one of the things that I suggested is to go find a pond, scout it out using bait and bobbers, find the fish, and then learn how to fish for him. So I do think that that being a bait fisherman will in fact make you a better fly fisherman. I don't know, man. I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Is that the same guy that you told to watch a whole bunch of Joan Wolfe videos on VHS or something?
Yeah, shit, yeah, I did. And you know what else? If that pisses you off, you.
It doesn't anybody piss who's me off at all. I just found it amusing.
I'm talking to everybody right now. I'm ready to fight, bro.
No, because sometimes Hayden will reply to a bent email, and I'll see the reply later. And there was one I was like, Joan Wolfe on Betamax. What are you telling this poor guy? Anyway,
yeah, man.
Anyway, I hope some of you guys checked it out on the meateater.com. It was enjoyable to get back to my roots a bit and write something other than a podcast segment for a change. So let's get into the news. It's a new year. Will there be a new Phil Taylor to judge us? Has he reinvented himself for 2022? We will find out because remember, this is a competition. Hayden and I do not know which news weapons the other guy is bringing to this fight. And it's your leadoff. I believe, this week, which is an advantage for you. So what do you got, bro? What do you got?
Okay, this one's for Joan Wolf. Okay, Joe. So this week I kind of have like a quick hit for you from the state of Texas.
The stars at night are big and bright, deep in the heart of Texas. If I hadn't used that clip from Pee Wee Herman so many times already, I would have Phil sub it in here again, but we'll skip it.
Did I tell you what happened when that episode played? I was in the car with I was in the car with my buddy, the one that you used that for previously. I was in the car with my buddy who's from Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. And dude, that clip played, and it was like he remembered he was in a cult. Like immediately, he just started like, and he clapped at one point. The whole
yeah, dude, you gotta do the absolutely.
Dude, it was super weird. Like it like just flipped a switch in his lizard brain, man, and he went straight.
You know, we might not teach you shit about fishing, but if we can take you back to Pee Wee's Big Adventure for just 1 second, you know, we're doing God's work here.
Anyway,
I'm sorry. Go on with the news, please.
So according to the Dallas Morning News, residents of Texarkana witnessed what is known as an animal rain. And what is that, you may ask? It is not a period of time in which animals ruled with an iron fist, but rather... But rather the actual raining of animals, as like they fell from the heavens.
I'm glad you clarified that. It'd be spelled differently if it was raining, like raining blood from Slayer. But okay,
yeah. Yes. Or just raining.
Or just raining. You can borrow my slicker. Okay, so animals are falling from the sky. Go on.
Yeah. I didn't want to get folks confused. Anyway, the residents found the ground like littered with fish after thunderstorms rolled through the Texarkana area last Wednesday. Over a dozen people called in to report it. Now, here's the weird thing, though. I mean, like animals falling from the sky is pretty weird. But like, here's the other weird thing. An animal rain is typically like very like explicable. Mm-hmm. A storm rolls in, generates a water spout over a nearby body of water. The water spout sucks in the fish and deposits them in where I think most fish would consider an undesirable location.
Like Texarkana? Is that undesirable?
Like Texarkana, yeah.
I love you, Texarkana. We're kidding.
We're talking about just land in general. It's not a dig. But here's the weird thing. Meteorologists issued no water spout warnings in the area, and looking back on the data, have since struggled to find any indicator of the type of conditions that would cause one to develop. Now, it's unclear as to whether people reporting this phenomenon actually saw the fish falling from the sky or simply walked outside and found a bunch of fish where they weren't supposed to be, which leads to another possible explanation, that being rising floodwaters moved the fish out of water bodies they inhabited, then stranded them on shore after the flood receded. This would seem plausible, except for the fact that there was no reported flooding.
Plot thickens. Mm-hmm. Plot thickens.
Of this mystery, meteorologist Brandon Thorne said, quote, "We're kind of confused as to how it happened as well, to be honest." Which is exactly how I hope like the official statement reads. Now, despite the fact that we know meteorologists are generally never, ever wrong, I'm going to assume that there was a water spout that happened that their model didn't pick up, because that seems way more plausible than people not noticing a flood.
Yeah, I heard about this story. Like I didn't read it at all. But we've covered some similar things in the past about fish falling out of the sky. And there's always that stuff on the Science Channel, like about weird blobs that fell from the sky in 1952.
12, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
1912.
1912. You're right. It was 1912 now that I think about it. So I will say that I'm curious now, because we've ruled out the two things that it most likely could be. So I'm curious to see where we're going here.
Yeah, I think they just didn't like notice a water spout on their model, or like, I don't know, nature did some like weird shit that wasn't like immediately detectable.
Right. Okay,
so to close out this story, I want to read a direct passage from the article in the Dallas Morning News here. Mm-hmm. It says, Devin Sewell, a sales manager at the Ormax car dealership in Texarkana, said he thought a neighboring business had thrown out fish between 2 and 6 inches long into the roadway when he walked outside Wednesday afternoon. Quote.
Sounds like some Reno 911 shit.
Then he goes on to say, this is a quote from Sewell. He says, "Then I started looking on the ground, and there were fish everywhere for about 100 yards. Sewell said the falling fish have been the talk of the town and that people have been getting a kick out of the quirky phenomenon.
There's probably not a lot of other stuff going on in Texarkana to talk about. You know?
He says, what's going to stink is I'm going to have to clean these fish out of the back of these trucks now," Sewell said. That's
good on him for having trucks at the Ormax car dealership in this time of car and truck shortages.
True.
So he's ahead of the game there. You know what I mean?
True. Should we just make like a plug for the for the Ormax car dealership?
I'm kind of shopping for a new truck. I might head down there.
Well,
I'll take them. Keep the fish in the back, bro. Which, by the way, what kind of fish are they? Have you said?
No, honestly, I didn't. I didn't notice what kind. They look like some like little.
They were gizzard
like
shad.
Gizzard.
I just saw it.
I was just gonna say they were
from the photo.
gizzard
I
shad.
didn't even read it, and I saw. I'm pretty sure they were gizzard shad. That's primo bait. Well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I'll tell you what, man, there's nothing more difficult than keeping those things alive without like a good like aeration system, man. Those things, you look at them wrong and they die. Yeah. Anyway,
okay. You've kept a lot of gizzard shad?
Yeah. A handful. Well, not like a bunch, but like, I've tried to go catfish with them like several times.
Just busting your balls. Go ahead.
I have indeed kept my fair share of gizzard shad. Anyway, I also thought there's not a lot of meat on this on the bone for this story, right? Like there was probably water spout, fish fell onto the town. Everyone's like, "Oh, it's raining fish. That's crazy." The end. I thought it would be fun to mention 3 notable instances of animal rain that happened in the past. If we could get a drum roll, please. Have fun with it this week, man.
Totally necessary, but that's all right. Yep. Go ahead.
Instance 1. In May of 2015, in the southern Tablelands region of Australia, they were treated to a spring, or I guess fall, shower in the way of millions of spiders.
Okay.
Bro, come on, man. Work with me here, bro.
I'm working and listening. We work together.
All right, well, the drum roll. In September of 2016 in Philadelphia, a woman was struck by a catfish that appeared to have fallen from the sky, although realistically, that could have been thrown by anybody in Philly. Like, I feel like we like to throw.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure that was my friend Pete Scharf, a.k.a. Melvin the Fisherman on Instagram. Shout out to him. He just catches flatheads and throws them off the overpass on 767 or 676 or whatever it is. I'm just kidding. Pete's a good guy.
Hope that's not true. Of the incident, the victim of the errant catfish, Lisa Lobrie, said, "Suddenly I was slammed by something. I was like, what? I was freaking out."
That's a great quote.
It is a great quote.
It's a deep quote from Lisa. Yeah.
This one's even better. Here's my favorite of the 3, entirely because of the quote. In August of 2007, the residents of Jennings, Louisiana, were treated to a refreshing sprinkle of worms. One of the eyewitnesses was a cop who was quoted as saying, "When I saw they were crawling, I said, 'It's worms, get out of the way.'"
Oh man, that's a pretty good one. Yeah. So, well, I think we're lacking a bit of closure on exactly what happened there in Texarkana, but that's okay. It's always fun to talk about these. They don't, but I think it's always good to talk about these weekly world news style stories every once in a while. I have personal experience actually with fish rain, believe it or not. I don't know if I've ever told you this. Yeah. So the Sunday right before Christmas, we were brown trout fishing, and I was making it just rain slob brown trout. And had your flight not been delayed, you would have been there.
You are such a dick.
To get in on the slob brown trout rain. Anyway, that was fun, wasn't it?
Please enter your password. You have one unheard message.
Hey guys, this is from HR. For the last time, you need to stop making fun of Seth and Chester for... Let me pull up the complaint real quick. For catching dink walleye? Seriously? This is a verbal warning. Please do not make me escalate this. All right, have a great day. Bye.
End of message. Delete. Press 7. Save. Deleted.
Where am I going to go with this now? How do I follow up fish rain? Fish falling from the sky to fish we can no longer catch. Terrible transition, but I don't care because damn it, I think I'm trying to win this week. So here's an interesting tidbit all the way from Hawaii. Okay, via khon2.com. As of January 1, 2022, get this, it is now illegal to fish for sharks in Hawaiian state waters. Okay.
Bullshit.
Now, that's kind of a big deal, right?
Yeah.
Now, Hawaii has already passed bills in the recent past to try and stop illegal commercial trade of sharks and shark byproducts. But as far as I know, could be wrong, but I'm pretty confident here. This is the first time in history a U.S. state has made it illegal to knowingly, and knowingly is the key word, target or capture any species of shark. Of course, part of this is also to crack down on sharks getting caught as bycatch and gill nets, but it certainly applies to rod and reel angling. So this was all passed under Act 51, House Bill 533, and the specific wording is this, except as provided in subsection F, which I'll get to in a second, or as otherwise provided by law, no person shall intentionally or knowingly capture or entangle any shark, whether alive or dead, or kill any shark within state marine waters. Any person violating this section or any rule adopted pursuant to this section shall be guilty of a misdemeanor, right? Now, subsection F, this is referring to the ability, you can still obtain, I guess, special activity permits to target sharks, but there's not much detail on how you'd qualify for those. But my guess would be that's for, tagging and research studies, right? Things like that. So here's a quote from the story. The purpose of the ban is to protect sharks for their ecological value while not criminalizing the accidental capture and release of sharks that may be captured while fishing for other species as allowed by statute or rules. So if you accidentally hook a shark while fishing for something else, no problem. But as I understand it, this now states that you can no longer in Hawaii set out to target sharks specifically. And I got to say, that's not a super easy thing to enforce, at least in my opinion, because some people might assume, if a guy's telling me he's fishing for grouper, right, but he's using wire or cable, he's probably lying, right? But these days, it's fair to keep in mind that many shark fishermen will tell you they get more bites on super heavy fluorocarbon, even I've done this, and a big-ass circle hook than they do on wire and cable. It's kind of been proven that if you know how to rig right, you don't need the heavy cable and the heavy metal to get it done. So
I guess you wouldn't, right? Because if that circle hook is just straight up in the corner of their mouth.
If it does its job, although I lost the only mako I ever hooked on my boat because of that, but for the most part, if it does its job and it seats properly, and we used to use, like, we're talking about, commercial, like, long line thickness circle hooks, big ass circle hooks on, 300-pound fluoro. But if it seats properly, most of the time you will land that shark if that's what you intend to do. So I think that it could be a tricky thing to prove in some cases. Now, here's the thing. While that's certainly, a big deal, especially in Hawaii where there's so many varieties of sharks, they're so common, they're all over the place. I'm also, not going to lie, I'm a little bit torn about this story, right? Yeah. And I can't help but think about the reaction to such a ban in the lower 48. And on one hand, we've talked about this a bunch. I totally agree that sharks need protection, right? Yeah. There's no doubt that on this planet, sharks need protection right now. I think they need it against large-scale commercial operations, global finning operations, more than anything. Not recreational fishing. And I feel that way about a lot of different species. It's not really the rec guys that are the ultimate problem. And while I think it's fair to say that the overall amount of serious shark fishermen in the U.S. is dwindling, it's just not what it was, 20, 30 years ago. There are still hotspots with thriving cultures tied to sharking, And while there are always going to be some assholes, right, to put it bluntly, most of the guys I know that still spend a lot of time targeting sharks these days are some of the most conservation-minded anglers that you'll ever meet. You know what I mean? Like they take the well-being of the sharks they catch very seriously. Thinking back to the biggest fish I ever caught was a 10-foot hammerhead from the sand in Florida with my buddy Zach Miller. That's how we met. Zach's been on this show a bunch of times. And to this day, I'm really sad. I don't have a great picture of myself with that fish. I have one sort of blurry, half-assed shot because even though these guys who do this are so gung-ho about it, right? They want and need that shark to swim away clean. You can't kill that species. You can fish for it. And they understand that if a dead, hammerhead washes up 2 days later, it's going to be in the news and it's going to paint the guys who shark fish in bad light. So, I mean, after a long fight, this fish came in and it was like wham, bam, gone. Like these guys wanted it back in the water ASAP, and then you look at other guys like Conway Bowman, who's been on the show. He pioneered fly fishing for mako sharks in California, one of the most conservation-focused people. You pass a ban like that here, he's done. You know what I mean? He can't even do that anymore. You pass a ban like that in Florida, you're destroying a community of the land-based guys that have existed for decades. So in a way, I understand that what I'm saying right now is kind of two-faced because I do strongly agree with shark conservation. I'm fully on board with not killing them. But, I mean, I have a 3-year-old son who's enamored with sharks. I was enamored with sharks growing up. I look forward to him being old enough to tangle with one. You know what I mean? We don't have to kill it. We don't have to do that. But I still, as an angler and a salty guy, would be sad if that opportunity was completely taken off the table. You know what I mean? So I think it's interesting what they've done here in Hawaii, but I'm also a little bit like, I don't want to see that go away for the guys that care and can do it responsibly.
I don't think you're being two-faced, man. I think like you're being nuanced. There is a huge difference, between somebody trying to catch something and experience that animal in a recreational pursuit.
Yeah, you experience for what it is. You feel the power. You appreciate what you've got on the end of the line, but you're not trying to bring that fish harm.
Right. And like somebody finning sharks. Those two things are wildly different to me. One is more appreciative, and one is like obviously exploitative.
But I do sympathize. I understand that with a lot of rules for a lot of things, be it animals or fish or whatever. Sometimes it's very hard to make everybody happy. You know what I mean? You kind of have to sometimes go with an all or nothing approach. And, I think maybe that's the case here in Hawaii.
It kind of goes back to, do you remember a couple weeks ago or maybe a couple months ago, that story that, I think it was your story. They did a survey of charter captains.
Oh, how do you feel when the shark takes your grouper off the line survey?
I feel bad.
I don't like when that happens. Yeah. Yes, I remember.
And they were kind of implying that like people who have experienced that would develop such a strong anti-shark sentiment that they would go out and purposely like target sharks to get them out of the area.
Yeah, and I don't know any Florida captains or otherwise that would do that. Yes.
Yeah, I wonder if there's like a similar sort of logic that's like kind of permeating, this decision. Personally, man, I've never gone out and targeted sharks, but I think one day, I'd like to. I got a cousin down in like Boca who he actually does a bunch of sword fishing, and he's been kind of crushing them lately. It's pretty cool. But, I'd like to go down there and maybe catch a shark with him.
Yeah, you just want to have that option too, and again, we're at, I don't want to make it sound like this is eminent in all states. Right. It's not. I'm just sort of supposing and thinking ahead, like, even down in the Keys and stuff like that. For the most part, guys aren't really messing with sharks, but every once in a while, you get that tourist charter with the kids, and that's what they want to do. You're having a cold front day, you can go play with sharks. So, would I ultimately be sad if it was like nobody's allowed to kill one, any species, any kind again? No, that wouldn't bother me as much as someone saying you can't go out there and do that. You can't even target them.
Yeah, but it's not like we're talking about bull trout here. You know, we're not talking about something that has.
I'm
like
not talking about bull trout, and I'm talking about sharking.
Yeah.
You know what that's from?
No, I have no idea.
People weigh in. Go ahead.
Joe and listeners, I'm sorry to disappoint you yet again. You know, we're not talking about something that really has a particular like conservation designation. I mean, sure, some sharks do, right? Obviously, but a lot of like the sharks that are commonly caught like don't fall into that. Like my buddy Jack, one of his only like fishing stories he can tell me, he's not really an angler. He's somebody who went and did it on vacation, was like about a lemon shark that he caught. Mm-hmm. Nothing wrong with catching a lemon shark. Yeah,
there's a lot of sharks. You know, I see a lot of stuff on YouTube now and again on catch and cook black tips down in Florida. You know what I mean? They're not in danger. There's plenty of them. You know,
well,
so
anyhow,
it is definitely case by case, but interesting that Hawaii went that way. You know, I'm curious to see if that becomes a model for anything else, and I'm also curious to see. You know, is Phil into fish falling from the sky or, you know, protecting the man-eaters? I really don't know. We're going to hear from Phil for the first time in the new year with new eyes, new perspective. See what Phil has to say. Phil's listening to this right now going like, I don't give a shit about your news section. Stop teeing me up so hard. But then as soon as we're done, I'll tell you what, we're going to go into the sail bin and we're going to take a wild ride. We're going to take a wild ride to start the new year with the sail bin.
Hayden, even you knew. I could hear it in your voice. The win this week is going to Joe Cermelli. Sorry, Hayden, but I do have a consolation prize. Recreational marijuana is now legal in Montana. So, congratulations. You can finally stop hitting up your cousin in Boca or buying that skunk weed from Lance V that he steals from his mom.
Well, why did you put the ad in the paper? You don't know what I'm getting at.
Well, you didn't have to be so hurtful with me, so angry.
I'm going to start off this sail bin with a broad generalization. And while it may mildly upset some folks, I'm thinking, or at least hoping, I guess, that most of you are going to say, yep, Joe's right, okay? And that generalization is that people who own jet boats are cowboys, okay?
Yes.
It's as if the jet boat, I don't know, like gives them license to thwart common sense and other safety measures associated with normal boating, right? Mm-hmm. And just say F it. I have on more than one occasion just stood staring at a low-ass river and thought the idea of running any hard-bottom boat with a fast engine here is nuts. Yeah. And the answer I get every time I voice that concern, whoever I'm with, is basically, don't worry about it, bro. I got a jet boat. You know what I mean? Like, it's just... Have you ever spent any time, have you fished on a jet boat before or run a jet boat?
You know, I have not personally ridden in a jet boat. However, like being so close to the Yellowstone, I see a lot of them. But I'm also like very familiar with like that mentality. I know two folks at the office who will remain nameless, who sort of recently took that a little bit too far and found themselves ordering some spare parts.
Yeah, and I feel like that happens a lot. Like nobody ever comes out completely like unscathed if you run it long enough. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know. I feel like there's no running a jet conservatively, right? It's either balls to the wall or nothing. And I've listened to so many jet boat owners back that up with bravado, right? Like even my buddy Captain Eric Kerber or Eric Garber, as you like to call him.
Stop it.
He mentioned that, by the way, on the Tog trip that you missed. But he's not mad at you. Yeah, absolutely. But he used to run a jet boat as part of his charter business on the river here. Now, on his bigger ocean boat, he's a very safety-oriented guy. Like, it's like top priority. Yeah. But when he had that river jet, all he talked about was like cutting the engine to slide over a rock bar in 3 inches of water doing 80 miles an hour. And it's like, woo! You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand it. It's like the dude who hits the emergency brake in the snow on a road to like take a turn that way. Yeah. It's like, holy shit. Like, dude, who are you? Like when you get on this jet boat, you know, it's like you get on it and you just like you get on a jet and become Steve-O all of a sudden or something.
I think there's like something about like an inhibition just just going out the window as soon as you're like.
But see, they're not indestructible though. You know what I mean? Like it's I don't understand. It's like it doesn't mean you can go anywhere.
Yeah, but it's like
at
the
any
lack
speed.
Yeah, but I mean, like, most of this shit is like, oh, I don't want to ding my prop. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to ding my prop. I don't want, like, to take the whole back out of this thing. And once, like, that's out of the equation and people are just like, I'm just half a bullet right now.
Yes, you're right. But, okay, you take the prop out of the equation. But, like, if you don't make it over the rock bar doing 50, it's just going to eject you to your death. You know what I'm saying? Like it's, I don't know. I'm not a cowboy with anything I do. But look, in case you haven't already guessed it, right? Today's sale bin item is, in fact, a jet boat. But the way it's presented is perfect because it backs up every single thing that we've just talked about and I've just said. And this was sent to us by listener Nick Shimp. Okay, it's listed on Facebook Marketplace in Afton, Illinois, and right out of the gate. The title is 1996 John Jett with 2 T's in Jet, thereby riffing off of rocker Joan Jett.
Joan Jett.
Now, the seller is asking 1,500 clams for this souped up John, but while the description is short and sweet, it's poetry. It's pure poetry. Would you like to do the honors on the description here?
I would.
Please.
Okay. It reads, sketchy cars not your thing? Doing 60 on a moped a no for you? That's okay. I got sketchy water stuff too.
Sketchy water stuff.
300cc Kawasaki jet ski running gear in a 12-foot John boat. No. Oh. So this isn't even...
No.
This is bootleg.
Yo, we'll get there. Oh, it's totally bootleg.
No leaks. Runs out nice. Turns great. Shallow water running SOB.
Yeah. So he's created, it's a John boat jet ski hybrid, which I mean, that is so Waterworld, like / Mad Max. I love it. But I mean, even the guy selling it has basically admitted that it's sketchy AF, as the kids say, which may be what prompted his closing words in the description, right? And this is incredible. So he ends with this: if you're scared, go to church. If you're broke, don't message me. 1,500 OBO trades welcome, and that's it.
It's funny, man, because when you look at the photo, and there's only one photo of this thing.
Right, yeah.
You would never know it was tricked out. It just looks like a shitty old like aluminum John with shag carpet glued over the bench seat. I honestly don't really understand how you even control this thing. Yeah,
without having more photos, I don't really see it. I can't get my mind around either. There's just a bunch of janky wiring and electrical tape spewing out from around just one of those cheap ass folding boat seats that's been bolted in the middle. You know what I mean? I don't know. I would love to know what's up. So somebody please buy this. Somebody out there, please buy this. And report back, because it's either a death trap or the coolest thing ever. It really could go either way.
Do you know how many emails we're about to get suggesting that we buy it for Das Boat?
Dude, everything that we post that floats, somebody says like that should be your next Das Boat. But dude, I'd be down for this one. Yeah. I mean, it'd be a scream. Anyway, Nick, thanks so much for sending this one our way. And listen, if you have a sale bin item that you'd like us to see from your favorite online classified, or just came to me, how about a story of some crazy shit you've experienced on a jet boat? We'd love to hear that too. Please send those along to bent@themeateater.com. If you're scared, go to church. If you're broke, don't message me. That should be a bumper sticker. That was my favorite part of that entire sale bin. That was a really good one. Anyway, listen, hilarious. we're gonna close out our first show of 2022 with a fresh new segment that we've been hinting at for a little while now.
Yeah, man. It's
drink.
What?
If this was the drinking game that Phil proposed, you would have to drink because you just said, yeah, man. Anyway, by the way, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
okay.
Do you know another listener reached out and said that I should have you put a buck in a jar every time you say, yeah, man?
I saw that. I thought it was $5.
But maybe it was $5, and then we could use it to fund Bent merch or a trip or something. I'm not going to ask anybody to count the yeah mans because I jokingly asked you guys to count something else that was said a lot one time. And like a few people did it. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry to waste your day. Like you must have had better things to do than that. So don't count anyway. I'm sorry. I threw you off. We were doing a thing.
It's okay. That's funny. Listeners at home, you can play along with our drinking game. Listeners driving, don't drink and drive.
Yeah, man.
Anyhow, yeah, it's a segment we're calling the Bent Helpline. Now, we've been asking you guys to submit questions for it. Joe, I put out a call on the old InstaSlam a couple weeks ago and just got lit up by questions. That was awesome. Keep sending those. And we've been getting some on the Bent email inbox as well. We plan to read one, or if you send a voice memo, play one at the end of each show and do our best to give you a somewhat useful answer. I think you're going to be getting more of those from Joe than me, but I'll try my best too. So without further ado, here we go.
What are you laughing at, Martini? You're not an idiot? Huh? You're not a damn loony now, boy. You're a fisherman.
What's your emergency?
All right, so welcome to the inaugural edition of the Bent Helpline.
It's a big day, man, and somebody's going to get to be first.
I'm really excited for this, man. You know, if I was listening, like this is the kind of thing that I would want, and you know, I hope we can deliver. Joe, what do you think, man?
Oh, I think I don't know if we can deliver because we don't really know as much as people think we do. But I will say this, right? In just a short time since we started asking for questions. Yeah. You and I have sat around and been like, holy shit, there's so many good questions. Like in just such a short span of time, we grappled with the first one because we've gotten so many good ones from so many different angles, which is cool because it changes up all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I literally before recording this, we sat around for like 30 minutes talking about like, oh, well, this one. We want to answer them all.
So good. We appreciate you guys for that. Yeah. It's really cool.
Yeah, and keep them coming. We want to answer them all. But going forward,
we cannot. Just to establish that we cannot answer them all.
we do have a surprise. We're going to get to some more of them eventually. But for this segment, we're going to answer one at a time. And this week's question comes from Hunter Shields, and he asks, "Dear Ben, how do you guys choose fish to harvest with conservation in mind, not the legality of it?" So what he means is like, you know, bag limits aside or creel limits aside. And, you know, legal specifications to which you can take. Mm-hmm. Which ones are you choosing? Joe, I'm gonna let you lead off, man.
Oh, are you? Oh, okay. You scared? I ain't scared of this question. And first of all, congrats to Hunter.
Yeah, congrats, Hunter.
Yeah, your first question, man, on the Bent Helpline. So my answer to that, I guess, to answer it properly, a thing to know about me, right? I've never been much of like a freezer stocker. You know what I mean? Like there's select fish that I really enjoy that I like having some on hand. I like having it in the freezer. Mm-hmm. But I've never been the guy, you know, that feels the need to always just have my garage freezer stacked with fish. Yeah. And you know, some fish freezes better than others, right? We know that, but I don't know, man. I've never been quite as excited to eat a piece of fish that's been frozen for a few months as I am to eat it fresh. So totally. I really enjoy fresh fish. And with that in mind, I tend to lean towards keeping only what I know I'll be able to eat fresh in the near term. So like striped bass is an example. In my younger days, yeah, dude, I was the guy that would take the 40-pounder, you know what I mean, and take it to the tackle shop for the photo and all that. Yeah, I don't keep very many stripers at all anymore, hardly ever. But if I were going to, purely for the reason that I felt like eating a nice piece of delicious fresh striper, I'd be looking for the one that was like the minimum size I was allowed to take. You know, and because I believe in saving the big breeders, man. I mean, there's so much striper conservation, so much happening in that arena already. I mean, there's already been laws put in place that you can't come here now and take a trophy fish anymore. That's off the table. Yeah. There's a slot limit, and then you can also apply for bonus tags, which actually allow you to keep smaller fish not bigger fish. I believe it's you can keep one 24 to 28 inches, something like that. Man, I've said this so many times. It doesn't matter what you're talking about. Small fish, to me, always taste better than big fish. You know, especially with white meat fish like a striper or something like that. So, yeah, man, if I was going to take one, I'd be looking for the little guy, and I would say this is going to be one nice meal for me and my wife, or two nice meals within the same week where I won't even have to freeze that fish. I'm not that interested in having like a freezer full of striper, so I get selective with that.
Yeah. I mean, this is really like conservation wrapped up in like personal ethics as well. Mm-hmm. A lot of these limits are put in place, or all these limits are put in place by biologists, right? Like, they've already kind of determined, hopefully, what the resource is able to like withstand from like a take aspect. Mm-hmm. Then like, if you're particularly conservation minded, then you kind of like police yourself into making sure that you're not taking more than you personally like need, right? Mm-hmm. Now with an individual fish, right? That largely like depends on like the species, and it changes all the time. Are you going for something that there are a lot of? Are you going for something that there are a few of? Like for instance, Joe's striper example.
Yeah, it's very hard to answer that question and have it be like a blanket answer that covers all things, right? Because it's just so situational. Like I say, I'm not a freezer stocker, and I'm not, except with certain things. Like as an example, we've talked a lot lately about tog, the inshore fish that I love to catch here, right? Delicious fish. All they eat is clams, crabs, mussels, and shrimp. Fantastic.
Yeah.
The season when you can keep the most doesn't open until November, and it closes on January 1st. So it's this very short window to even have the opportunity to keep a bunch of those fish. Mm-hmm. That's one I think freezes a little better. So when I'm out there in the cold, and I know I'm only going to have a couple shots to get after those fish in prime season, that's an example of one where I don't mind having a limit. I want the limit that time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But that's not based so much on anything other than sort of here's your shot to make that happen. I might not eat a piece of tog again until next November. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Same thing with tuna. If I'm putting up the money to run 75 miles offshore and put in a full day like that, I'm about bringing home my limit of yellowfin because I don't know when I'll get there again.
Yeah.
But
to bring it back real quick, just to like the individual fish, I think like the way that you described how you pick and choose fish in general to take, I think makes a lot of sense. I think that's going to resonate with like a lot of folks. When it comes to like individual fish, my rule of thumb is basically leave the big females alone. Mm-hmm. Leave the big females alone, whether could be largemouth bass, could be brown trout, could be stripers. If you make sure that the breeding stock is going to be there for next year, overall, you will have a healthier fishery.
So let me ask you this. I'm just curious, right? So like when you fish for something with a higher bag limit, like crappies or yellow perch, you know what I mean? Like, are you hoping for that limit each time? And I'm learning about you, right? Because we haven't talked about this. Like, are you down to have a freezer full of fish? Like, does that appeal to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the word is fecundity, right? Like, it depends on what kind of fish I'm fishing for. If it's perch, I would like to get a bunch of perch. And here's the other thing that's like kind of like contradictory to what I just said. I don't mind a bunch of female perch because I like to fry up the roe sacks.
Sure, it's like another twist in the whole thing. Then you look. That's why it's so hard to answer that. You're right.
Yeah, but the thing though is like nobody's worried about perch stocks. They reproduce at such a rate where that's not really a top tier consideration for wildlife conservation. That's why the bag limits on perch are so high. Perch, panfish, whatever. I think this is really like a question that pertains to things like stripers, to things like trout. that sort of deal. I mean, an interesting one to think about is paddlefish, right?
Sure.
You can buy, now paddlefish, if you don't know, you can only catch them by snagging because they're filter feeders. And a lot of times what people hope for is to use their tag on a female paddlefish because of the roe. And they want to make caviar out of it. That said, interestingly, there are also catch and release permits for snagged paddlefish, which I think is like pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I could never figure that out either because I think it's cool and a cool cultural scene. But I mean, the way you get them is pretty gnarly.
Yeah. And then the last thing that I'll say is another thing that can sway me on like whether or not I keep that individual fish is the way that it's hooked. If I put that fish back in the water and I see a puff of blood come out of its gills, I'm like, all right, well, that one's coming back with me because I just don't believe that the survival rate is particularly good, and that could be misguided. But if it's legal and the fish is bleeding, I'm going to bring it in. Yeah,
man, and I will say, you sort of said, well, you have to consider these things more when you're talking about things like stripers and brown trout. The irony in that, though, is a fish like striped bass in particular, it just hits close to home. There is a huge conservation issue with those right now.
Yeah.
But people tend to treat trout with like those same kid gloves. I think it's fair to say that by and large, especially with wild trout, there is this reverence of like, don't eat that. When in reality, there's a lot of notable fly destinations in particular, like the Upper Delaware system, a lot of places in PA, even out where you are. There are rules that allow you to kill trout in these places. Like those trout are not necessarily in trouble at all. There's no conservation issue. It's not like the numbers of trout are way, way down. Yet you're still like an asshole if you catch a 20-inch trout and bonk it. And like, I don't agree with that either. I think it has to do more with focusing on the specific, ecology and like what's happening in that particular stream. And the burden's on you to know that like me taking a large trout out of this system right now could be detrimental to this system. But even in places where it's not, it's like, oh, no, don't kill the trout. Don't kill the trout. And I don't kill a lot of trout at all, hardly ever. But I still disagree with that mentality. Like if I was just recently out brown trout fishing. If somebody in that boat that I was on was like, hey, man, can I bonk that and eat the shit out of it? I would have been like, yeah. Like, it's legal to do. Yeah. Like, it doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah. Well, here's something interesting that happened not too long ago, man. We were fishing. We were trout fishing. And I kept catching these big whitefish. And I love to eat whitefish, man.
Yeah.
But they were these big spawning fish. I just kept letting them go. Then my buddy caught like a nice 20-inch rainbow. And we bonked it and we ate it. So, I mean, a lot of it is like circumstantial, man. I think we did a pretty good job answering this question, though.
I do too. I think my closing thought, like if I could just sum it up, would just sort of be like, my advice whenever you're considering taking fish is, I don't think it's unfair to adopt that mentality of taking what you'll eat soon and, what you can eat fresh, especially if you're talking about something that you have access to. In other words, I don't need to kill a limit of this, that, or the other thing, crappies or, trout or smallmouth, because it's not this narrow window where I have that opportunity. It's not your one trip to Alaska a year to catch your halibut or whatever it may be. If you have access to it, I would say be more conservative. You know what I mean? Like take what you need for a meal, and that you'll get back there soon enough to get more if you have a hankering for a crappy sandwich. You know what I mean?
Yeah. My final thought on this is, a lot of times we talk about, considering the species over the individual. And I think when we're talking about this question in particular, it's important to consider the individual in the context of the species. Like what that fish might mean for that fishery going forward. So just keep that in mind, man. And
Good first question, Hunter. We thank you.
Solid.
I think we're going to have a lot of fun with this because we've already like giggled like schoolgirls over potential answers to other questions. We're like, oh my God, this question is going to be funny as shit. But we started there and that was a lot of fun. So we'll do this again next week. And if you've got a question, DM me on the Insta Slams or Hayden or fire it off to bent@themeateater.com. By the way, we love voice memos. If you want to send it in that format, you might hear yourself here on the Bent Helpline.
Well, that's it, degenerate anglers. Please keep those questions coming to bent@themeateater.com, either an email or a voice memo. And remember, keep sending in those bar nominations, sale bin items, awkward photos, and whatever else you feel like sending in.
Yeah, man.
Drink.
Oh, shit, I did it. Good on you. That was quick. Yeah, man. And oh, shit.
Drink.
Anyway, look, remember to keep those Degenerate Angler and Bent Podcast hashtags cranking. Hayden and I love to see what you guys are up to. We expect maybe some hard water, maybe beating up on the local stockies, some winter fly tying. We love it. And, hey, if you want us to see something completely unrelated to fishing that you post, just tag it. Yeah, man.
Yeah, man.